issues, but one of the issues I would love the panel to talk about is how is today's HR in today's world going to measure, inculcate, and assess those qualities? It's a very fine problem that we are dealing with. People who are directly leading teams understand very quickly, okay, this is the person I can bank on. But how systemically are we going to evaluate those people, hire those people who rise above everything else to the occasion that this pandemic has brought forth to us? It's not going to go away. We'll have new problems coming in, but an organization will become great only if we have those people who look beyond their own domain. With that, let me now invite the second panel, which is going to be led by Dr. Kathuria. If I can have his introduction on the slide, please. Professor Kathuria is the Dean of School of Humanities and Social Sciences and Professor of Economics at the Shiv Nadar University. He's a former Director and Chief Executive, Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. He has over 20 years of experience in teaching and 25 years of experience in economic policy. Besides his research interest on a wide range of interests related to regulation and competition policy. He has worked with the World Bank as a consultant and carried out research assignments for a number of international organizations. He has published in international and national journals besides in popular magazines and newspapers. He's a founder member of Broadband Society for Universal Access and served on the board of Delhi Management Association. He's on several government committees and on the Research Advisory Council of SBI. He has an undergraduate degree in economics from St. Stephen's College, a master's from Delhi School of Economics, and a PhD degree from the University of Maryland. Rajat was also one of the phenomenal and leading men's player in table tennis. He was India number 3 at one point of time, before he gave up his table tennis career for the world of economics and academia. So I would now like to invite the Rajat Kathuria to lead this conversation and our second panel, and to invite our panel for the conversation.
Thank you, Anubha. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Anubha. Thank you so much. And thank you to the previous session. I heard the sort of tail end of what Bibek was saying at the end, and he's really said what I wanted to say. So I'm just going to reiterate some of the points that Bibek has already made, but it's a pleasure to be on this. I'm as much of an insider at SNU today as I am an outsider. I've been in SNU for about a month now. In fact, exactly a month. I joined on the 1st of April. So some of my comments that I make about SNU in the introduction will be as much from the point of view of how sort of it has impacted me as much as it is from the point of view now, as I said, from an insider's perspective. But it's been a phenomenal 1 month, also unprecedented 1 month, because I've only interacted with people online. But the topic itself is, as Anubha was saying, and I'll try and weave into the questions and into the conversation, the point that she was making about empathy and how do you measure it, scale it, and try and get companies to embrace empathy. And I think this is terribly important. And I think it's important not only from the point of view of companies, but it's also important from the point of view of entire countries. And it is important for countries also to become inclusive and to become sort of diversified and not just become exclusionary and elitist. We have to get away from that notion and that idea. And what better time for companies and countries to get away from that than a crisis? Of course, I know that we are in very dark times, but why waste an opportunity? As we say in India, never waste a good crisis. This is the time to put in place things that you always wanted to. But inertia almost takes over and companies continue to doing the same things. Countries continue to do the same things. And you need to look back, and you take a break and look back and say, can I do this better? And I think a crisis such as this is an unprecedented crisis. It's not only a public health crisis, I think, in countries like India. It's now a fully blown economic crisis, and which has spread to the rest of the world, and from countries wherever it started. Let's not get into the debate of where this crisis started, who's the source of this crisis, but it's kind of spread across the world. It's an economic crisis, it's a public health crisis, especially in India, where the medical system and the healthcare infrastructure is almost breaking down in the face of the numbers that we are seeing. But if you look at, where are we going to go in the future? And I think Anubhav's question is extremely important, is that we need to reassess both from both a country and as well as a company point of view, where we want to go in the future. And I think in this context, let me say a few quick things before I go to the panelists, which is that, we've never seen anything like this before. The previous recessions or crises that happened in the world, even the 1930s, and more recently during the crisis that we had early part of the century, 2009, etc. What we saw then was really a demand side problem, right? There was a demand problem. And we knew how to deal with it. This is not only a demand problem, this is a supply side problem because of social distancing. We've had lockdowns, we've had calibrated lockdowns. We have had a process of lifting the lockdowns, unlocking the lockdown. But, they still remain in many parts of the world, including in India. So we have a demand problem, we have a supply problem, and therefore, we're going through unprecedented times. At this time, there are certain sectors, as Bibek was hinting, that begin to do better because of access to technology and the way you reach people. And obviously, it is the technology-based sectors that have been, the telecom sector has been doing very well, the technology sector has been doing really well, but there are sectors that, especially the service sectors, that have absolutely been brought down to their knees because of social distancing, hospitality, travel, tourism. All these sectors have had huge, large, damaging impacts on there. So even when we grow back into, people are saying that India will grow at 11%, 12%. Even at those growth rates, not counting the current crisis that we are going through in India, which will have an impact on the bottom lines. But even if we, let's say, grow at 9, 10%, in 2022, we will just come back to the level that we were in 2019-20, when the crisis really began to unfold. So, these high growth rates have to be seen from the lens of where they're going to take us. And then, of course, we have to continue to sort of sustain these high growth rates. And it will be incumbent on not only upon the companies that we are talking about, but a whole range of companies that are at the lower end of the spectrum, that will also need to be supported both by government in terms of employment creation and creating employment in the informal sector. But we are going to talk much more about the formal sector in this. But it will be incumbent on companies both in the informal sector and the formal sector to see that India is able to sustain these high growth rates. And at this point, since I'm talking about services that has had seen such a major negative impact on itself. Some services much more than others. You look at education and health services. India has been rightly, I think, justifiably criticized to a large extent for its underinvestment, both in health and in education. And I think that's brought out, if ever you needed proof for that, this crisis has brought that into the forefront. And I think it's important for us to recognize that government can play its role, but private sector also has to play its role. And I'm not going to focus on health so much, but I'll talk much more about education. And it's a good segue. This is a good segue for me to bring in actually the private investment in education of the kind that SNU has made. And I think SNU represents to me, as I said, I'm going to speak as much of an outsider as an insider. And SNU represents to me the good side of how private investment can make an impact in a service sector. And I'm not saying that just because I have to say it, but I think I've really been impacted by this. And apart from the great pool of talent that is, incumbent or that is resident in in SNU. Apart from that, I think their whole approach to the education services, education sector, has been with the human face. And that's what we want companies to do. This is what Bibek was saying. You have to approach this empathetically. You have to approach this with a human face. I can, speak a lot about how Indian companies and corporates have faltered at the altar of empathy by being, really profit oriented. And I don't want to get into that debate here, but I think the debate of how private sector can positively contribute in sectors like education and, of course, health. And the example, I think, is being set by SNU. Apart from all the good things that Vivek spoke about, I think the multidisciplinary, the great pool of talent that comes from India and abroad, and it sort of becomes a melting pot to attract all that talent in the faculty, multidisciplinary research, all the centers that have been created. I think at the level of students, it's not exclusionary. And the vision and mission of SNU is to ensure that it doesn't remain exclusionary. And I think that's extremely important to maintain diversity in the classroom, not only geographical diversity and gender diversity, I think from the point of view of backgrounds, diversity from the point of view of background. And there are stories and stories about how people from really humble backgrounds have made it to the best universities in the world from India, because they've got the right opportunities. And I think it's extremely important that the private sector embraces this idea of empathy, because it's very easy to be exclusionary. But it's much more difficult, and we have to go down the path of difficulty. And I think I'm so happy, as I said, that I've been a part of this mission. I'm beginning to be a part of this mission of private sector provision of education, and doing it with a human face. And I think globalization has been rightly criticized because of lack of human face. And a lot of investments, a lot of private sector has been rightly criticized. And I think that criticism will continue. But education, which has so much public good element to it, which has so many spillovers to the economy, to the welfare impacts, to individual communities, to individual households, to individual families. I mean, there are stories and stories how parents don't wish their children to go through the same lack of education that they went through. And I think so it's not one SNU that can fill the gap, but there have to be many SNUs. And I think SNU is providing that template, as far as I see it, for others, private sector to engage. And I think a template also for public sector to sort of how to engage in the education space, to provide students to do what they wish to do, what their passion is, not just medicine and engineering and so on, to do their photography, to do natural sciences, to do sculpture, to do painting, to do fine arts, to do creative writing, and apart from the others. I think this is what has sort of so impressed me about SNU. And I hope that, I become a part of this journey and mission that SNU has sort of visioned for itself. So those are the introductory remarks I wanted to make. I will keep weaving into this conversation the point that Anubha has made about, how do companies become empathetic? And it's important, to look beyond the bottom line. You need to look at, people say the triple bottom line: sustainability, inclusion, etc. So this is a good opportunity to bring in the first speaker. And I'm going to, as I bring in the speakers, I'm also going to introduce them. I don't know if Prakul is there, but if Prakul is not there, then let me go to the second in the list, Sreejith Nambiar, who is the head talent acquisition APAC and executive search at Autodesk Singapore. You've got his CV. I don't want to just read out. You've all got his CV. You can read, but importantly, he works in talent acquisition. He works in technology. And I think if any of the sectors have been impacted by the pandemic, and this is not just the pandemic, I think the march towards technology was happening anyway. I think the pandemic has just accelerated, and some of it will become permanent. I mean, once the pandemic goes away, and hopefully it will, some of the change might be there to stay. I mean, who knows that we'll be doing webinars much more often than we did in the past. Of course, as Bibek said, we don't want to get away from face-to-face meetings, but some webinars will stay. You'll save costs, you'll save travel time. Some things will become permanent. Some things may go away as the pandemic recedes and we develop vaccines to combat it. But I think this is a space that will remain dynamic, and this is a space that will remain challenging, and talent acquisition in this space will be extremely important. So I wanted to, hear from Sreejith, what are the challenges that he's seen and how his company and he himself is responding to these challenges as a result of this pandemic. So over to you, Sreejith.
Hi, hi everyone. First of all, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. I mean, I was super excited. I actually joined an hour and a half ago, and then I dropped off just to just calm myself down. These are like very interesting conversations, especially with students and professors, which we definitely miss. And thank you, Ashish, for setting up such a nice team and such a group to interact with. I mean, if you ask me, during this pandemic, did we have challenges? Plenty. I would start by saying, like, we learned a lot of things about our own self as a company. First thing is, like, we never knew that we were able to actually operate in virtual mode with globally. So many things that we thought will never happen. I'm sorry. So many things that we thought would. There's an echo coming in. Okay. Okay. Anyway. Can you hear me clearly, all of you?
No, Sreejith, voice is echoing. May I request everybody to put themselves on mute? Sreejith, you're not in the device, right?
There is an echo for you also. Okay, I think it's for me also. Okay, let me check this one.
This was also a learning for us, technology, during this pandemic.
It's no longer there.
Yeah, it's perfect. So I think the first thing that we learned is, again, we realized a lot of things which we never knew, like we can actually operate virtually globally. And that kind of started a new direction for all of us. The way we were actually engaging with our customers, even that changed a lot in terms of, and the direction of the company also changed in terms of how can we become really focused to our customers rather than just, like previous time, virtually, how do we create those new relationships? I think those were some of the customer related things. From TA perspective, a lot of people were in a dilemma. Should we change jobs during this period? And you'll not believe 2020, we hired a record number. Again, you might think that, software companies, were they really impacted? I feel we were in a positively impacted also, because a lot of companies which are in the software as a service model, we were actually doing pretty well. All our ACVs, numbers, revenue have actually increased in spite of, having these massive field sales teams and everything, but inside everything moved kind of an inside model, but yes, really impactful as well. Some countries, I mean, when it comes to hiring again, certain countries, we had challenges when it comes to making sure that the laptops are there in time. You might think this is a very small thing, but how do we onboard people successfully? Making sure they have got system access can be provided, but how do we make sure that they're getting their laptop in time? How do we make sure that they're getting a good onboarding experience in the first place so that they are able to have a good experience? We have done so many kind of onboarding virtually. And we literally went back to these candidates time and again just to check, how did you feel? Is there something I can help you? So these are new practices that we actually slowly built in. We were actually in parallel also training hiring managers in terms of, hey, how do we get rid of your biases? Sometimes if there's a technology issue, a candidate, some managers may think that, okay, this guy is not that great. Maybe, it doesn't have a connection. Maybe there's a voice blur or a video blur or some things. Some impact, and how do we make sure that that kind of an experience can be reduced or kind of reduce all these kind of an impact? So it's been a lot of it's literally kind of you're on a plane, you're trying to change the engine and make things work in parallel. So it was interesting, challenging, but I think we achieved a lot. As I said, we made massive number of hiring in the last 12 months, like 2020 specifically. And I think in this entire process, even the TA team also has kind of become much more, I would say, from more of really executing stuff to a much more advisory role, because you can really say that, look, I'm not able to hire in this market because of these challenges. I'm not able to onboard people in this market because of these challenges. So you're able to say that loud and clear to your business owners and make them understand, instead, can I come out with this solution in this particular market? The other thing that we also saw is like even candidates, like, this is a good bunch of, university students we're talking about. The way employees have started changing this game is they have started reaching out who's looking out for a job. It was not like only a recruiter is hunting down people, but it's also the other way. Candidates are also hunting for the right opportunity and say, hey, I bring the relevant experience, hire me, I'm the best. So all these dynamics have changed in the last couple of months, I would say, and still changing. And then we will definitely face more challenges if this continues. And it's a long answer, but yeah. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Sreejith. I'll come back to you, but I like the metaphor on of the aircraft. I mean, things are really difficult. So you're actually repairing the aircraft while it's flying, and that can be quite catastrophic. But people have used that metaphor in these challenging times, and I think the point about employees also getting into this game, that's important. It's critical as well, because I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody else is not going to fend for you, you have to fend for yourself. And it's important, I think, to recognize the reality as well, that employees so far, their bargaining position of employees in companies has really not been the negotiating position, especially in countries like India. From Indian point of view, the negotiating position has always has often been less than the bargaining position of the employees.
But just to add here, Rajat, the other thing is like, how do we retain people during this kind of situation? Just not about hiring alone. It's also about, it could be like some markets, like for example, India is one of the markets where we had massive challenges because of initially when the lockdown happened in India. People were struggling because they were not able to meet their numbers, because it's an era of numbers, right? All this decade is like more about if you don't perform, you perish, basically. So how do you make sure that, you keep your employees excited, retained, yet motivated and inspiring? And that's where I think previously the speaker was talking about humble leadership or inclusive, able to accept people in, bringing that belongingness into play. Those kind of things also kind of changed during the last couple of months as well. So it's been an interesting journey, I would say. And if I talk, I can go on talking, but yeah, just stop pause here.
Yes. No, I mean, these are insights, and empathy, of course, as Anubha was saying, is the way to say. I think this has to be the key. I mean, there is so much of emotional sort of damage that has happened at the level of individuals, of course, companies as well, and countries. There's so much of emotional damage that has happened as a result of this. I think empathy becomes extremely important. You have to look out for your employees and, as you say, retain them. I mean, this is also an opportunity to bring in diversity into the conversation. And I wanted to, invite the speaker from Mrs. Temitope Adedayo, who's the head talent acquisition from PZ Cussons from Nigeria. And here is her CV, extremely dynamic. And she's been is the regional head of talent acquisition and development Africa for PZ Cussons, Nigeria, a subsidiary of PZ Cussons International Group of Companies. And of course, a distinguished career, as you can see on the slide, if you read it. He's got extremely illustrious career and very good qualifications, and has a first degree in computer technology and MBA with distinction, and was awarded the Vice Chancellor's Prize for being the most outstanding postgraduate. So really welcome, Mrs. Temitope Adedayo. You can speak on the top, but I really also wanted to talk to you about really diversity and how, what is Kando? I mean, I've been struck by Kando. What is Kando in PZ Cussons, and how do you sort of operationalize it? And how do you ensure diversity and inclusion in your company, apart from the other things that you would like to talk about? A warm welcome to you. And over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I believe you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks to SNU for the opportunity to be able to speak. It's been interesting conversations since the session started. Okay, so Kanju for us at PZ Cussons speaks to 5 values, and that's courage, accountability, networking, drive, and oneness. And for us, really, it's not just about candidates having the right experience in terms of just on the job, but it's even much more important for you to be able to align with our values. And because cultural fit really is key. So whether you're talking about employee engagement or you're talking about performance, productivity, everything ties together, even towards retention. And that's why usually we would tell candidates. So when I have, for instance, university graduates, one of the things I usually would say is research the values of the organization you want to work with, because that's really very important if you're going to have a good experience, a rich experience with the organization. So because really another bit really is that skills can be taught, but it's really it's much more difficult to teach the behavioral things like the alignment to your values. It's much more difficult to teach softer things really, and that's why the values more or less tie with learning agility. So one of the things that we look out for as recruiters or when we are hiring candidates is to be sure that we don't get easily swayed by impressive profiles. Because you may see a really interesting profile and the CV could be all packaged, but you realize that the person doesn't just align with your organization. And it's important that as people look to switch careers or they enter into the world of work, they really align to those values. And as recruiters as well, it's also important that we're able to spot those compatibilities because it's very invaluable, and it speaks to when you come to an organization and you're not able to fit into the culture of the organization. As you rise up in the cadre, it starts to affect your leadership competences, because as you get to the top, it's not necessarily just about your technical competences, but the leadership behaviors then start to show, and some of these values really start to show in those behaviors. And speaking about a very recent experience, for instance, so what was going to hire a candidate recently, and even though he had all the technical competence we need and performance-wise was strong, but we just realized at the point of almost making him an offer that it just wasn't aligned to our values. So things around, when you start to get disrespectful. So I said, for us, we have can-do values. One of that is oneness. We don't take things like disrespect lightly, really. So when you start to get disrespectful at the point, even before joining an organization, then it speaks a lot. So usually when we start to look out for candidates, those are some of the things that we do to ask scenario-based questions. And also ask intuitive questions to really check where the head is in terms of some of those values, because you don't want to have senior people in your organization as you build your succession for the future and your bench strength, where you just build organization with people that, for instance, lack empathy. We've talked about empathy all day. Okay, so which then goes into talking about diversity, equality, and inclusion. I know you talked about diversity and inclusion, but I would also want to add the equality bit to it. And that talks about treating candidates and employees as well fairly. As we've gone into the remote work is even much more important, because you realize that you're hiring from different backgrounds. So you have candidates with different diverse backgrounds. You have candidates of different races, different genders, different physical appearances. In fact, these days, now that we're remote, physical appearances, I'm not sure if it still counts, because I believe much more than ever before, there's that tendency to want to move from just the physical appearance and from those things that would naturally cause diversity issues to things around productivity. And I'll speak a bit to that in a moment. So as an organization, some of the things that we do is to have, and every organization needs to do this, is to have a strong diversity, equality, and inclusion policy that is driven right from the very top. So you expect that senior leaders will drive this. So it goes round the organization, and you also ensure that you're having compliance of your DEI policy. And that talks to equality, talks to respect, it talks to lack of discrimination, talks to victimization, talks to not harassing candidates and employees. Because I believe that the journey, the real employee experience starts even from a recruitment point of view, and not necessarily when the person gets hired. So it's like the end to end. So it's very important to have an inclusive work environment now. It's very important to focus on performance management, to focus on things around merit, to focus on things around competencies and potentials. And our responsibility as HR people is to then be able to coach some of our leaders or our hiring managers to shift the focus away from the person really to what the person can do. And so we need to let go of things that have to do with personal biases. We need to let go of things that have to really be personal preferences, personal opinions. Now that everything has even gone remote, you realize that the best candidates may not necessarily even be the most attractive, in quotes. And naturally now, because people also have different circumstances, is also affecting interviews as well. So talking about technology issues that you raised earlier, to say the kind of technology experience affects whether you have a good candidate interview experience or not. Interestingly, in the course of, so since COVID started, we have gone all virtual. So right from recruitment, from the shortlisting phase, even to resumption. So virtual everything, onboarding, everything really end to end. So I have candidates, for instance, that I've never met face to face, but yeah, they're delivering immense value. So I had one of my best candidates during the COVID period, since we started to hire, actually had all his interviews in a car. So before now, that would have been an issue, really. Why would you take your interviews from a car? But every stage of that interview was taken from a car, and he's been hired a couple of months, and he's thriving really, really well. So it goes to the fact that as HR people, as recruiters, we shift away from that, from things that are not important. And as we then go on, we need to start to focus on some of those things that are important. We need to focus on the skills that we need for the future. So skills around flexibility, skills around adaptability, skills around agility, personal learning, continuous learning. Now that we've gone into remote work, for instance, autonomy has also become really essential, because nobody's going to be micromanaging performance anymore. So you need to have that ownership mindset. We need to focus on that. We need to focus on enhanced communication, because it's more difficult to communicate virtually than face to face. So some of these things, and like we've all said earlier, things around empathy, things around emotional intelligence, continues to be really, really key and priority while we look for the right kind of candidates. I hope I've spoken to your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you. And if we have time, we'll come back to you on in some of the points that you've made. I think extremely important point, which is that some of these things cannot be taught. Some of the soft skills cannot be taught, and they're acquired by candidates over a period of time. I think the challenge for acquirers and talent acquirers like yourself is to, how do you judge that? How do you determine that? And is one interview sufficient? And as you said, you ask different kinds of questions in the screening process. You build scenarios, etc. And I would like to know that whether is it a foolproof sort of solution? If you've had any issues with that, and how you've dealt with them. But I'll come back to you in a bit. But as you said, diversity is multidimensional. There's no question about that. I mean, diversity has to be multidimensional. It's not usually people talk about one sort of dimension of diversity, but it has to be, as you were saying, and you brought out so clearly, it is a multi-dimensional concept. So thank you. Yes, you did address the question. I'm conscious of that. We are also sort of hitting the end, and we have Ashish Gakrey. Mr. Gakrey is, he's an entrepreneur himself, and he has built this company called HR Shapers. And I wanted to bring him into the conversation, especially with the question of what prompted you. Here is the CV, a short CV of Ashish, founder of HR Shapers, well-known HR leader, global speaker, globally connected, social media influencer, blogger, Gen Z expert or Gen Z expert, mentor, coach, and techie. HR Shapers globally reach out to HR associations body for knowledge sharing and networking. It has 25,000 members presence in different countries, 25 countries and 50 locations worldwide. So, and the rest of his CV, please go through it. Let's not spend time on this, as I said. But Ashish, the question sort of which would be interesting for many students out there, and I think some of the students will become entrepreneurs. In my experience, a number of students after a few years on the job decide to branch out on their own, and they'd be, they'll welcome to hear your experience. What made you become the founder of HR Shapers? What was the opportunity that you saw, and what is the vision that your company has? And what are the lessons that you would want to give to the students based on your experience? Ashish, over to you, and a really warm welcome to this session.
Okay, thank you, Professor, and thank you, Shiv Nadar University, Aparna, Anubha Madam, and Professor Banerjee also did wonderful job of panel 1. So great insight. And yes, so Professor Rajat, this is not the first one which I started with actually. I have been in this kind of model in last 15 to 17 years. Yeah. So perhaps I can call it, this is my third or fourth venture, and this venture is always along with the working. Okay. So till last year or till last year, end of 2019, I was working. So if we count it before 2019, so there have been many ventures similar to, HR Shaper and all. So it's kept going, I was part of, IT industry, HRIA association, and many other association, part of NHRD, then closely working, have been associated with SHRM, People Matter and all. So these are the any part of this. Entrepreneur is not a new and buzzword. I would give one message to all students that there is a one place where there is a less competition is entrepreneurship. Go for it. Okay, no competition. If your idea is good, just go for it, and you can be surprised. During the pandemic, many people have become an entrepreneur. Many people even become a YouTuber. They are earning a lot of monies. Okay, and there are lots of examples, and it's all available. What I'm saying is not news coming to me. It's not inside news. It's all there in the world of social media, Googles and all. And they are verified news and true news. People are making money in a different way. The way Professor Rajat organization changing their business model, people are changing their thought process, and it's all depend upon the education model of the university, schools, institute. It's all depend upon then how the student will take it ahead. Yeah, it's nothing new that what company is looking for. It's nothing new that what student need to talk during the interviews, and it's also nothing new that what student need to be prepared to be clear in the interviews. This is all we know. Only the challenge is whether they are able to show, they are able to communicate what they know when the opportunity is there, and that's where there is a lot of gap, right? So reason can be anything, but if you don't do it on the time, somebody else will do it. So HR Shaper is 7 years old body. Yes, we are in 25 countries. You take the name, we are there. Most of us who are part of the panel is part of the location group, and the model of HR Shaper really worked in this pandemic because HR Shaper is a model of country specific and location specific WhatsApp group, right? Many group you are part of it, all of us, they are just a group and everybody is added, right? So in this pandemic, when there is a group of Mumbai, when there is a group of Singapore and Australia, Nigeria or Dubai, and if there is any problem, people are facing, members are facing, they immediately post it over there. They know they will get a response because people are there only from those locations. Yeah, so this is huge communication going on. Though there are many forwards. WhatsApp University, we are all aware. People keep forwarding, but it is saving somehow. Life also in a many way. If you want 20% information which is coming across. Yes, just day before yesterday, I like to take the example of Dubai HR Shepper. The guy is working with Choitaram retail group, and he just messaged me. Actually, he called me, Ashish, I need your help, and that's specifically from Mumbai. He said my in-laws, one of the in-laws there in the Mumbai, who's 85 years old in Bandra, and he is unable to go to hospital, find the hospital. Nobody's there. He's just staying alone. I told him, send me message. I will post it on group. So there are two scenarios. If group is common, this message will go, but response will not come. When I post it on all my Mumbai group, response immediately come. That guy got the solution within just half an hour to 45 minutes. Sreejith is part of the group, Praveen is part of the group, and then Siddharth is part of the group, and Siddharth is part of Singapore group, SEA we call it, Southeast Asia. They've been discussing about various issues. They keep getting a lot of problems, and members keep sharing a lot of benchmark data and all. So it's really happening in a big way. Entrepreneurship, yes, as I said, it's a buzzword, always going to be buzzword. Less the other place where there is a less competition and all. And I like to somehow contribute to the conversation about the topic as well, which is very relevant. And we keep talking about, like Professor Banerjee said, future of work and all. Yes, it's a future of work which became a now of work, way of work. Then we keep saying a new normal, old normal. It is just a normal now. We need to ensure that we are being adopted. We need to ensure that we are existed and all. So all those buzzwords, but what future of work was saying earlier, 60% job will be automated, right? Okay, there are 80% jobs which we don't know what would be after 5 years. Okay, and we are giving education on XYZ, right? Data also said that you will change your career at least 5 to 10 times in just 5 years. And today, the moment we are talking, many people changing their career from one to another. That's reality. Organization changing their business model, that's reality, right? So, and then future of work is digitalization, like, we were talking about AI and all. AI is taking a lot of jobs, but data say otherwise. I mean, not the AI exactly, but the digitalization and automation. Data says up to 70 to 80% job will be replaced by a human being, okay? And more than 130 million jobs will be created. So there is a huge opportunity for digitalization. Another thing is we are going to get into gig model. Hybrid model is another model, but we are going to get into gig model. Now she's just sitting in Singapore, will recruit people from London, will recruit people from Nigeria. Temitope will recruit somebody sitting, in Australia. What we need to have a good collaboration and virtual tool. At the same time, we also need to know that, am I being trained to take the interviews? Same time, students need to be aware. They need to be very well virtually etiquette driven, attitude, approach and all. There are a lot of quotient we keep talking and in HR, social quotient, emotional quotient and all. Today we have come to the point where we need to know the digital quotient. While I'm talking, I can see myself, I'm smiling, right? So there is an immediate feedback I'm getting, right? I can see others also, which was not possible earlier. So there are a lot of things, we are learning over a period of time and all. And it's actually the VUCA which is happening right now, Professor. We are in the disruption.
Yes.
One of the largest global transformation project is taking place. Whether you talk about the crisis, whether you talk about the changes, whether you talk about the mindset, global transformation. Every company, prime minister, chief minister, any local bodies, they are all working from home, which never happened in the entire history. Imagine this is happening before 10 or 15 years, Professor, what will happen? Technology, digitalization has saved the corporate world, right? just because of the technology, Sreejith is there, Praveen is there. It may not have been possible before 5 years if I'm talking to SNU and asking, okay, let's do and let's get something, like this. May not be possible. So there are many changes which are happening. We have come across, you have come across interview happening online, onboarding happening online, right? Sreejith talk about the onboarding, virtual onboarding, internship happening online. Never thought that HR will be ready to deliver laptop at home before you are joining even, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So lot of and companies doing extra mile to do all this, right? We are obviously the right now. The moment we are talking, many people are facing problem and they are into crisis. They are in medical crisis. So yeah, let's hope everything go for a better and all. And then we say business contingency plan. I would call it go one step ahead and say people contingency plan is the most important.
Absolutely. Yes, Ashish. Ashish, since we're running out of time, I had one set of questions for each speaker, and I'd sort of start with you, and then in the reverse order, I'll go to Mrs. Temitope Adedayo, and then to Sreejith, and then sort of conclude. But let me start with you in reverse order. You made several interesting and important points, and I think we'll need another seminar to talk about the future of work. This is not, that can be an intellectual discussion on what's going to be the future of work and the fate of labor markets, not only in India, but worldwide. But the interesting question, I think, to you, an interesting point that you made was about being able to identify that space which is less competitive, and then walk in there, get in there in the correct timing. I think that's what economists all the time talk about, is where is that space niche that you can get in quickly when nobody else spots it, because nobody likes competition, as I think your remarks clearly amplified, that you want to get away from competition. Nobody likes competition. You want to create at least in your field, you want to be the only one there. So how do you do that? Can you tell students how you're able to identify the opportunity for entrepreneurship?
Okay. So entrepreneurship, if you have any idea, nobody is stopping you. You can start working from anywhere. Okay, that's one thing. Plus, if I look at the university institute and management, they have very good ecosystem nowadays, and I'm sure SNU has entrepreneurship cell is another way, where they can come and go, okay, I have idea. Can you do something for this? We can sell it perhaps after 6 months, 1 year. Hackathon is another example. Many students, they are participating in hackathon, which is happening online now. Like Capgemini used to do the hackathon, then student used to participate over there, where the idea can be, you can work on the idea that will be obviously then become a proprietary of the company, but your idea can be sold in, obviously you are getting a chance. You are being exposed to, many of the creative and innovative things. Yeah. Which kind of people you are surrounded with, most important thing, do you have something? And it's all going back to the drawing board and see and talk to yourself. What I want to do actually, what I want to do. Understand yourself, identify yourself, know your strength and weakness. Something what is called is SWOT analysis.
Yes.
Somebody really want to get into, just go for it. Would you believe that the IPL which is happening 2021, it is sponsored by all Indian companies.
Yes.
And those are very young age companies. Yeah. Yes. Most of them are very young age company. Because like if I ask you SNU, how many education tech company you are targeting as a placement for this year or next year? They are going to be boom market. And they just started last 1 year. For example, so many education tech company, Coursera and all, they were not doing good. But just last 6 months or 1 year, they started doing, because every university looking for a platform where, I can educate my, 5,000, 10,000 people worldwide, global and all. So I can do lots of things and all. So this is just my submission specific to the entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashish. Wonderful having you, and thank you very much for your comments. May I sort of go to Mrs. Temitope Adedayo? The question that I had asked you earlier was about how do you sort of try and unpick from your potential candidates that trait that you talked about, the traits, the soft traits? What are the mechanisms, and do you make errors in those, and how do you sort of redress those? I mean, some of the things that would be interesting for students to know.
Okay, thank you very much. From a student's perspective, one of the first things they need to realize is that every stage is an assessment. So every stage is an opportunity to make an impression. So right from when a recruiter places a call to you, how you answer that phone call is an impression. And even to things like emails that you write. So when you send an email to a recruiter, now I know that we're in the tech savvy age and tech savvy world, because a lot of us, I also use short forms and short codes and all of that, but realize that people are beginning to send some of those such short codes in an email. So for instance, maybe you want to write, things like FYI. Now I know FYI is for your information, but we're assuming that the person you are writing to understands some of those codes that you use. I usually believe that it's better to play safe and write in full. Don't use the OMGs, the FYIs, some of those softer things that people are getting used to as part of the norm may not necessarily be acceptable in a corporate environment, especially when you have loads of candidates that are qualified for the same job. We talked about the supply being high now, but the truth is the supply isn't very high for the right kind of candidates. And those are the right kind of candidates that you would say fit into, right in quotes, really. Those are the kind of candidates that fit into the pool you're looking for, because you are working remotely now, there's more demand on the kind of candidates that represent your company. So, so they need to understand that every stage is an assessment, right? So when I call you, how do you answer me? You speak to some candidates on the phone and they're just purely rude, or you speak with them and they're very, very courteous, very warm, they're candidates that you want to go the extra mile for. You've already made an impression. Now let's put aside biases. I'm talking about corporate impression, because you never can tell what I'm assessing. Okay, so that's from the bit of the first contacts you have with your hiring company. So I've already there's some times that maybe we go into interviews and I probably tell the interview panel, I share some of the experiences I may have had before the interview in terms of the candidate's experience, the relationship I've had as a recruiter experience with the candidate before. So whether they like it or not, we are making an assessment. Then you come into interviews. Candidates need to know that it's even more difficult to impress during a virtual interview now compared to a face-to-face. And that's because it's technology, you may have technology hitches, or people are also pressed for time. So which means that you need to make very quick impressions in very short time. So your first 5 to 10 minutes in an interview is really critical. Talk about things around your body language, talk about things like your communication skills. So some of us need to brush up some of those communication skills. Some of us need to brush up some of our technology skills. So you assess some candidates and you're already telling them, so some candidates, for instance, even come late. So usually one of the things I do to give a candidate experience is that I try to join the interview as a recruiter 5 or 10 minutes earlier than the other hiring panel, just so that I can help the candidates to settle in, just some technology adjustments, camera adjustments, and things like that. But a lot of times candidates are not even there. Okay, so usually I would then have to put a phone call to say, can you come in early so we can do some of these testings? Okay. So things like that. Some of their cameras, you're then saying, okay, move up. We can only see your neck, can only see your chest, and some of those things. We're already forming an experience. Okay, so it's important that at times they need to arrive early and test these things. Other things around, we also ask a lot of scenario-based questions. So I'm telling you describe an experience of when something happened. So for instance, can you describe an experience, maybe you claim to have some entrepreneurial skills, and I'm saying, okay, so can you share an experience with me, or when you were in school, what you did that give you some of those entrepreneurial skills? Okay, you're saying that maybe you had to sell to make your way through school and all of that, and I'm saying, okay, so what did you sell? How did you sell? What did you learn? What business acumen skills were you able to get from there? Have you had conflicts before? How are you able to manage the conflicts depending on the role that you're hiring for? So what we normally would have is that we have behavioral test questions for different roles that we hire. So if I'm hiring you for a customer service role, then empathy is key. So even though empathy is key for all roles, right? In some certain roles, empathy is even much more important in terms of customer service. So some of those things are things that you can easily ask questions around, and you tell the candidates to describe. And when we ask candidates to describe, I don't expect that. So if I'm saying describe an experience, then you need to know that it's a market. You're selling yourself. You're marketing yourself. So you need to then be able to bring forward your unique selling points. Understand that communication skills too is key when it's virtual. So I'm not going to sit and not be able to engage. At times it may just even be a smile that makes it more welcoming. It may be some movements. It may be, but a lot of times we watch different things. So they need to understand that it's not just physical things that you sell. You're selling your ideas. You're selling your competence. You are selling. When we want to recruit like management trainees or graduate trainees, at times maybe we need just 30 and we have over 10,000 applications. So you need to then be able to say how you're better than all those other people that you have in the different things we watch out for across the entire process.
Thank you. I think these are extremely important points, and I'm sure that students are writing them down profusely, what you've just said. And interestingly, a metaphor in the current situation is everything is data. Everything is data. I mean, you're assessing the candidate, and you're picking up data points, especially in a technology-related world. We keep saying, or a technology-intensive world, we keep saying that so much data is being created, and 90% of the data is never used. But the 10% of the data that is being created can be used for doing assessments like what you're talking about. So thank you. I think these are extremely important points for students. Sreejith, wanted to come back to you for the last sort of interaction. And you had mentioned that technology-based jobs, and I think that's a given, are increasing, and those are going to become important. What is your sense? I have sort of two questions. What is your sense whether these are likely to stay? Are they going to be there? Are they there for good? As Ashish talked about, the gig economy, etc. I mean, if you could weave in some of that, are they here to stay? And the other point that you and Mrs. Adedayo had also made is about your biases. I think interestingly, students would want to know, how do you sort of get rid of biases? Is there a mechanism by which you can get rid of those biases, or you let it happen on its own organically?
Sure.
Sreejith, over to you.
So first thing is, I mean, just to add to both Ashish and Ms. Adedayo, I think, the other thing I would also tell students is, one thing is to kind of always look for your purpose. I think looking for what your purpose is, makes a huge amount of impact in getting that direction. Number two is, like, again, are you willing to fail? In our culture, sometimes it can be so impactful. Like, if I don't get a big job, if I don't get a good job, if I'm not associated in IT, you may feel like, oh, I'm left out with this entire journey. Am I away from this entire, the noise that happens in the market? So I think that's one thing which I would say, is something all these students should need to really keep in mind. The second thing about technology you mentioned, right? I mean, you see the speed at which technology is changing today. I'm a recruitment leader. My team, sometimes the hiring manager also don't know what we are hiring. The recruiter also don't know what we are hiring. We are in a dilemma because we are figuring out something. It's so fast. So it's kind of, so hence the relationship between the hiring manager, the recruitment, and the business is getting more stronger and stronger. The more we are getting closer to the business, understanding on a daily basis, okay, where they are heading, what's the direction, what are the closest I can hire, from where can I hire? Is it in Singapore or is it somewhere else? Where can I go to the market? It's like literally going, go to market model. So that's the speed at which things are changing. So I think as a student, when you're looking at all these things, I think the best thing is having that mindset of the ability to learn as quickly as possible, staying updated, listening, observing, these kind of things. Like entrepreneurship, something that we were talking about earlier. You see, we may think that entrepreneurship is like just an idea just born in somebody's brain. No, it's actually an observation, because you're like, looking at, even if I'm just browsing on a net, like your Instagram or a Pinterest or wherever, you can get millions of ideas, and you can start something with that also. So it's like, it's not something that will just come overnight when you're sleeping or when you're doing some meditation. It will just come and, you'll become an entrepreneur overnight. I'm sure Ashish has spent 4 or 5 years listening, observing, meeting people and learning from everything, which made him to kind of see that this is the potential in the future and here's what my direction is. So I think that way, and the similar thing with technology. I think if you have an intention or a passion or an interest towards a particular technology, go after it, figure out all that's possible in that area. And then you go in front of a customer and say, hey, you know what, I'm the best. Here's what I'm good at. This is what I've been doing researching. And I love to partner with you. Let's work together. And, it's not that in India you don't have, I've seen several leaders or several employees who, if you are confident enough, you can actually dictate terms. Today, it's not just an employer's world anymore. It is an employee's world as well. Because as an employee, you need to have that confidence. So build your confidence, learn, relearn, unlearn, do whatever, build your skill sets. So go specifics, don't just do this generalist thing. Doesn't work anymore. You can't be a, like a MBBS general doctor type. You have to be somebody who's a specialist. And as a company, right, when we are looking at people, we are looking at 3 or 4 things, like what, our previous speaker, Adedayo, spoke about. We're looking at skills and knowledge, right? Number 1, that's a very critical thing. We're looking at behavior. Number 2, we are looking at achievements, right? What kind of achievement do they bring? And last is, what's their motivation? And in all these things, the most critical one is your behavior. We can compromise on skills. We can teach that. We can compromise on your achievement. It's okay. We can make it happen. It's not necessary if you work for a Microsoft or a Google, you'll come and do the same thing in Autodesk. Not necessary at all. You can be an utter failure. So it's all about these kind of things that you need to always keep in mind: the behavior, your achievement, and as a student, I think you need to do a lot more research today. Then you have to think about one step ahead of an employer. We are training constantly our hiring managers. You know what? You need to be extra smart. Students are too smart, or candidates are too smart, because they know exactly what to ask. You know exactly, if you're going for an Amazon interview, there are 14 Amazon principles. How do I rectify that? How do I speak about it? How do I make sure that I'm able to answer all these questions to the T? You can practice and come. But one thing we will still figure out is, okay, where did you screw up? And that is what we will also figure out. The intention is not to get rid of people by, where they screw up, but the intention is to see what you're trying to do and what you're trying to prove. So it's be yourself, be your authentic self, bring yourself, and as much as possible, learn and unlearn, and like make yourself skillful and relevant. Because a lot of students I've seen, they come for an interview, they would have just browsed through my website. They would have definitely, seen some comments on Glassdoor about our culture, and then come and interview. But you should be so prepared that you should do your entire research on which group am I going and meeting? Who's this guy? What's his story? What does this group do? What does this particular business unit do? Where are their directions? Can I give them some ideas? So, futuristic ideas. And that's where people will feel an interest as a hiring manager to continue your conversation and then start engaging with you. These are some things that I think, we should keep on, and technology will keep on changing. So it's only that we have to keep on changing continuously.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sreejith. I think this has been a most fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, we've sort of hit the deadline, and therefore there's no time for questions with students. Is that okay? Anubha, if you could just conclude now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me, I don't want, I'm going to be discreet, and as Shakespeare said, let discretion be the better part of valor, and not try and summarize everything that has been said by all the distinguished speakers. I think, I don't think I'm capable of summarizing everything that has been said. by the speakers. But this has been a fascinating conversation. My takeaways, I mean, a little bit of the takeaways. One, I think we should do a section on future of work, not only from the student point of view, but from, I mean, of course, from the student's point of view, but also looking at a more macro perspective. Where are we headed in terms of future of work? And lots of agencies are doing that. One of the things that clearly comes out in the future of work, and Ashish pointed this out, and I think we don't need to be alarmist about this. And these alarmist statements that come out from organizations that 70% of our jobs are going to be lost to technology, I mean, that's really alarmist, and it's doing no favors either to countries or to individuals or to companies. I mean, this fear thing, you're just generating fear and making people more nervous and anxious, while actually you want to assuage them. And so I think these statements, which are not true anyway, you're not going to lose 70%. And we should sort of, the point I'm making is that while the gig economy is going to take off, etc., automation is not going to, especially for a country like India, and I dare say for Nigeria, automation is not going to end the world as we know it. In fact, as Ashish so rightly pointed out, I think automation is going to be, technology is going to result in a larger pie, and therefore there will be new jobs available. Probably it's in technology, as Sreejith is saying, and you need to be skilled enough to be able to embrace and accept and get those jobs and realize those jobs. So I think one session on that would be nice to do. The other point which has come out, and Anubha, thanks for this, is your point that you started this conversation with, is empathy. And I think that has come out loud and clear. It's been the dominating theme, I think, of this conversation, is that empathy is extremely important. And you can look at empathy in various ways. And there are ways that employers are able to suss or able to unpick empathy even during the interview process. So one has to be careful. I mean, of course, part of it is innate, your conduct. You can't change your behavior overnight. And these are values that you pick up over time. But one has to recognize the fact that everything that you say, do, hand movements, facial expressions, etc., are being sort of, in a virtual sense, are being recorded by the people, and they're being able to assess you on that. So I think that's also important. And I think Sreejith's point, and I can't emphasize this more, all the speakers have talked about virtual onboarding, and my own experience so far has been only virtual. I haven't, ever since 1st of April, since I joined SNU, I have not seen the university. So I'm doing everything virtually. The laptop was delivered to me virtually. Everything is being done. So I'm sort of a living example of that. But I think the point that Sreejith made about fear of failure and the ability to take risks, I think extremely important. This is not from an economist perspective, but it is just my own personal experience, is that you have to be able to take the rough with the smooth. I mean, don't worry about what somebody else is going to tell you about what you're doing. That often gets people, students, anxious, not taking the decisions that we really want to. What will my parents say? What will my friends say? Do follow your passion. Of course, we know this as a cliche, but I think it's important to recognize this, that failing is not something that you should worry about. In fact, it's a stepping stone for success. And as much of a cliche it may sound, but I think it's important for students to recognize that it could be a stepping stone for success. And it's extremely important for students to recognize that. Of course, we are in an extremely dynamic world, and one doesn't know where the world of work is going to take us. But don't be so anxious. I think Malthus's prediction that the world will come to an end did not happen. Technology expanded the pie, and it's done so in the various industrial revolutions before us. The only thing different about this is the pandemic, and it's come at a time when we were having the industrial revolution, the new industrial revolution. Some call it the fourth, some call it the fifth. And what has happened is that the pandemic has made things really bad. So we'll deal with it, but don't be worried. And for students, and I think you'll be okay. SNU is a great place, as I said in my opening remarks. SNU is a great place to teach you, multidisciplinary, those values, empathy, sports, art, everything. And remember, all of it is becoming a part of your education, a part of who you will be either 4 years from now, 6 years from now, depending on what you do. So thank you all very much, Ashish, Sreejith, Mrs. Adedayo, and Anubha and Aparna for putting this together. It's been a delight to talk to all of you.
Thank you.
Fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Just a curiosity question again, Professor, because like how the cricket as a game has evolved over a period of time. It's more like IPL and all those series have kind of come down. If I kind of take the same analogy, all our courses in the universities and schools have also been like 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, kind of things. In this entire fast-moving world, do you think in the future these things are also going to be like a crash course in everything, like from a 3-year degree or a 4-year engineering to a 5-year medical to, just a curiosity question in my mind, sir.
My quick answer to that question, Sreejith, is
Rajat,
there are some...
mic is, Rajat, sir, there is an audio issue. Can you just check once? I think your voice is giving.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but there is a light echo around it.
There's an echo? Okay.
Let's all of us try to be in mute. It might help him.
Okay. So, Sreejith, I think that's a wonderful question. Let me just say that there are some things that you can't shortcut. There are no shortcuts. And I think education is one of them. I don't think there are no shortcuts to success in education. In fact, SNU represents sort of a departure in the sense that SNU has embraced a 4-year undergraduate program. And I think the reason is not only to develop a major, your honors, what you call in Delhi University, but also to have what the entire panel has spoken about. I don't know enough, but this is what I've picked up, is to have, the other minors. And it could be anything. It could be, art, it could be, sculpture, it could be design, it could be for English, creative writing, for engineering students, it could be something else, for economics students, it could be something else. So I think a holistic education will stand you in good stead in the future. And 1 year in the long run, according to me, and I don't want to talk about the long run of kings, but in the long run, 1 year extra would add disproportionate value if a student is actually benefited from what he or she is doing on campus. This multidisciplinary, it's a catchword, but I think it makes a real difference. And so it's good to spend 1 more year at the undergraduate level, and you never know how it will pay you back in the future. You never know. And there will be instances where you will go back and say, oh yes, this is what I did in college, and this is what is really important. So I think there are no shortcuts to education.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Sreejith, if I just do some analogy, see, every company is tech company, irrespective of what they do now. Let's understand, let's admit, they are tech company, and we need to be ready with the digital adoption, digital attitude, approach, and quotient, right? And when we talk about this IPL and all, and time will come. Today we are working with machine is working for us. Time will come when we will work for a robot.
I'm sure.
And robot will report to us, or we will report to robot. Okay, partially it is happening. If you talk about the IPL, the third umpire is the guy who will decide whether you are out or not the umpire who's sitting over there. Another analogy, Sreejith, this CCTV decide what has happened actually, rather than what I have seen or you have seen.
Correct.
Yeah,
very true.
It's already happening, and that's how we need to prepare our new generation. Ki guys, are you ready in this way? Because we don't know 80% job which is going to be there in 2025, Professor Rajat. We don't know what are those.
Yeah,
but at the same time, my last sentence, we need to ensure we as a human being create more human out of the human.
Yes. So very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashish. Over to you, Anubha, for the conclusion.
Thank you, Rajat, and thank you, Sreejith, Temitope, and Ashish. That was a wonderful session. To all the students and to each one of us, I do want to say that the evaluation process during hiring is only one part of a 40-year-old long career that you're going to have. There is no perfect job. You don't have to get everything in your first assignment, in your first job. There will be downs and there will be ups. There will be some great assignments you'll get. There'll be some great work areas that you'll get. Some of them may not be as interesting, which is perfectly all right. Life is beyond the workplace. If you can be good human beings, if you can contribute to the world that you live in, if you can contribute to the environment, your country, and you can do that by being responsible citizens, that itself is a great achievement for each one of us at the university and also for your mentors across various organizations. If we are inherently good and we look after what is around us and we are responsible, our organization we work for will grow, our country will grow, and the world will be a happier place. So don't worry about the perfect job. Okay. What is an important takeaway for me is one word which Temitope used, good manners, which we don't talk about anymore. It's an old-fashioned thing. You know, those were the times when they used to be good manners, used to be talked about by parents to the little children, teachers to their students. Everybody used to talk about just simple, basic good manners. They were important then, they are important today. Let's just try to be a little more kinder, especially with the world that we are living in. With that, I think our panelists today have been terribly kind. Today, HR is absolutely crazy with the kind of work that they are doing. So to Sreejith, to Temitope, to Ashish, to Amit, to Siddharth, to Darwin and Praveen, big thank you. Ashish, you were also the co-creator of this event, so a special thank you to you. It's not easy to take out time from our busy schedules. All of us are completely tired sitting in front of the laptop. You took out 3 hours of your time. There were many days of follow-ups for this. So thank you. It's very much appreciated. Our students have learned a lot today. Rajat and Vivek, you were phenomenal. Okay, we couldn't have better leaders than you leading this university. So with that, thank you. Good night or good morning, wherever you are. Have a good day. Be safe wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
bye-bye. Take care.